I live on the border of New Brunswick and Nova Scotia with my family, and I'm originally from the States. And my mom lives pretty far away from me, so she's never gotten to see me read. Well, actually, you've seen me read, but not since I was like 22 or something, a long time ago. Before the book, before all this. So she's here, so she's going to cry through the whole thing and just ignore her. Okay, this first one, I'm going to set my timer for it. This first one is called Living with the Dead. My dead don't like winter. It's too much like eternity. They want it always to be spring, the windows open and the lights left on. They remember the pinch of wind on their faces, twisting their ankles on rocks. The world, they say, is full of danger. Better to live with books and music and the phone unplugged. They've driven away more people than I can remember. What's more, they lie. They rewrite history, always coming out good in the story. They want to really discuss their lives and what they amounted to, the mark they left, which means on me. They want my version succinct and with a healthy dose of redemption, so they know whatever mistakes they made have been mended. The dead don't like loose ends. They're healthy and tan and thinner. The sickness gone, gray hair returned to brown, burns and scars faded, the yellowed skin pinkish again. Their bodies don't show punctured veins, and they don't need sleep. I should know they'd never change, but where else does wisdom come from? Without the fallible world, I figured they'd learn a thing or two, maybe pass it on, to make things easier on those who'd suffered when they'd gone. They don't care for easing my mind. They want to know if I've thought of them lately, and what I remember, and how I can possibly love another in their absence, after all we've been through. They want my life and dreams and future dreams to include them all. I want this too. I make room for them, a corner or a shelf for each. And I talk to them when I'm alone. Why should I neglect them just because they're dead? My house is jammed full of those who don't want the doors open, who want the world brought in with little intrusion from strangers, where for whom time means nothing, and living in the mind is more real than the outside world. I'm happy to oblige. It's the least I can do. Thanks. My mom requested one. Can't find it. I'll read it later. I'm going to read this long. So I have a found poem, but it's very long. It's in many parts. So my parents, sorry, Mom, I always tell these stories. You're just never here. I don't know how to make these poems without telling a little intro now. So my parents were conscientious objector counselors during Vietnam. And that's how they met. They worked for the War Resisters League, so they would help counsel active soldiers on how to get out of the military, how to get conscientious objector status. They were part of the network that was smuggling soldiers into Canada. And when my father died, I found boxes and boxes of his papers, and I found all these letters that soldiers had written to him. He was running this project out of New York for the War Resisters League, the GI Coffee House Project, and he had this really inspired idea to write a letter to the editor of Playboy magazine describing his program. And he got hundreds and hundreds of letters from soldiers after that. And so I didn't know what to do with these letters, and I felt like this weight of history, like carrying them around. You know, I had them. My father passed away when I was 20, and I carried them all over the country thinking, what am I going to do with these letters? And I felt like I needed to publish them, but I don't know where these people are. I didn't know how to track them down. I didn't know. I just felt like it's this huge project. And when I was putting this book together, I thought, oh, this is my book. I can do whatever I want. So I decided to I took the letters and I kind of cut them up and made poems out of them. So I finally found a way to publish the letters. So this is called Letters from Vietnam. So these are, you got the drift, these are all letters. Okay. Dear Sirs, I am in the Air Force stationed in Little Rock, Arkansas, waiting to go to Vietnam. Like most sane people, I have no desire to go. I realized I should have started my attempt to get out a long time ago. They really don't give you much time to think. I hate war and everything to do with war. Why should myself and others have to go every place in the world and fight and never know the reason why, except that we were ordered by someone who doesn't even know or care whether or not we exist? I would rather get out legally than become a deserter. I need your help. Dear Sirs, I attended a military academy prior to entering the Air Force. God just didn't create me to be part of the military. The whole scene is just too far gone. I have a clean military record, however. I have my chick and a fine family to think about. I would like to get out with a respectable discharge and sail to the island of Kauai and do some country living. I have considered going AWOL. I feel like a little kid having to sneak around with my long hair and being my real self. I'm fed up with their way of thinking. I find the thought of the military war machine distasteful and against the basic instincts of man. Dear Sirs, I have been in the Army for 2.5 years and been to that godforsaken place called Vietnam. Thank God I didn't kill anyone. My mother died. I went AWOL for 4 days. I was told I had to return, but I flatly refused. My family has called me a communist. I believe I am classified as a deserter now. I intend on turning myself in when I get a lawyer. I have nowhere to go. Do you have any suggestions where I could go or live? Here is my Vietnam patch, my VFW card, and my 3 purple hearts. I'm getting sick of looking at them. Dear Sirs, I enlisted about 3 months ago, after having become frustrated with college. I couldn't justify spending my father's money any longer to avoid the draft. I concluded the Navy was my only hope. It would keep me out of Vietnam, pay for my education, and give me experience in photography. I can now see that my reasoning was completely faulty, but at the time I was confused and desperate. I am sure I cannot endure 4 years. I've considered refusing any orders, to run. I'm afraid my convictions are not strong enough to counteract the disastrous effects of an undesirable discharge on the rest of my life. Dear Sirs, I am currently serving with the Air Force, attempting to gain conscientious objector status. I cannot serve a government which wages senseless wars, oppresses minority groups, does practically nothing about pollution, etc., etc., etc. I'm writing to request some help and some reassurance there are people who care about not only our nation, but the world community. That way, I would not feel as though I'm beating my head against a wall of military minds that think more about death counts and SS9s than integrity. Dear Sirs, I'm stationed in Vietnam and face another tour. I am at the end of my rope. I've just about gotten to the place where I don't give a damn. I'm trying to find some reasonable means of getting out. The fact remains I was made to do something I didn't believe in. I have almost been killed once, so maybe you will understand I have no desire to flirt with death again. I am only interested in getting out of the service in order to lead a more real and meaningful life. Dear Sirs, I believe I was illegally drafted. My first pre-induction physical found I was not medically qualified for military duty. I was given an L3 profile. Reasons: polio at age 5. It afflicted me with muscle atrophy of ankle, leg, calf, and thigh muscle. My right leg is shorter than my left. Bilateral hallux valgus and residual deformity. My second pre-induction physical found me medically qualified. I want to get a discharge. I guess I am like most GIs. I don't know of any rights I have, because the people that run the show only tell you about the ones that can be used against you. Dear Sirs, I am presently detained at Fort Riley on court-martial for being AWOL. I was gone 7 months. It's lonely and sometimes very depressing. You can't send literature, as far as I know, but a book? It cannot be about sex, pornography, communism, the new movements of today, left or right, any type of subversive material. Tell yourself that you should raise your child with peace in mind, and to help the world be a better place for mankind. God bless you, your wife, and your almost child. Yours truly. That last letter was sent the month before I was born. I have the timer going, but the phone turns off. I'm not going to sit here and just keep putting my password in there. Okay, this one is called In the Night. The phone chimes in the blue-black night. It starts far away, then nears and won't give up. My husband turns from me, pads the floor into the hall. It is the limber assertion of sickness again, casting its shadow like a net. We're hauled back up into it. He whispers in his office as I wait. It's his turn now to accumulate a lexicon of terms that bear the weight of what's too large to really know or want to know. His voice is calm, shrouded still in sleep. He'll return to me, heavier and without speech, alert to what is now a motion he's swept up in. And I'll rub his shoulders, press my lips to his face, remind him of how love waits for us in the cracks, when we're dirty and blind, that it never lets up, even when we're thin as parchment and covered in sores, even when we've resigned ourselves and opened the door to lesser hopes. It's there, hiding behind the curtains, hat cocked to one side, velvet gloves buttoned up, ascot tied and tucked in. You see it? When you turn your head, caught in the corner, holding fast to shadows. It's stoic and tricked out for the moment. You're its target. It hones in while your finger traces threads you've let unwind. Let sleep piece them back together in finer webs, in taut silken knots. Sleep, my love, sleep. So this is called The Poet's Devil. We all have romantic ideas of our lives, you know. That's how we get dressed in the morning and leave the house. Otherwise, we'd never shave or bother with silverware. Have you forgotten the art of seduction, miss? I'm only a figment, yet look at how I've handled my lot. I brought down kings. I had mothers burned in front of their children. You hear what I'm saying, don't you? Implication, suggestion. Don't be a dolt. Words are power. You're thinking too hard on all this, my ducky. You're still going to die. And since you don't believe in an afterlife, you'd better write your goddamn heart out. So, a couple more. How am I doing on time? It's hard to tell. Okay. So, I'm 12 minutes in. All right. I'll wallop you at the end. So, My dad was an eccentric character who decided I was raised by my father. My sister was raised by my mother, which is a long story. My father, when I was about 10 years old, decided to adopt a prisoner. And I lived in Columbia, South Carolina, and he took me every Saturday to visit a complete stranger who was in prison. And I became very close to this person and had really fond memories of him. And when I was writing this book, I was trying to remember the name of the prison and his name. And, my father's gone, so it was hard to sort of get the information. I had to do a lot of internet research. And the more I researched, the more bizarre the story became, until I realized that he was taking me every Saturday to a maximum security prison to visit a death row prisoner. And I have no idea how they allowed this to happen, but the more I ask people who are involved with us and from my youth, they say, "Oh, that's how the prisons were those days. They weren't very strict." I've asked many people, and they always say that, it just wasn't very strict back then. So Sammy, I really loved him. He was a really kind person to me. And so this is the poem that came out of that. And it's called The Murderer. 3 men kneel in dark woods. The other 3 later had things to say. Who talked first lived. In time, their story became storied, and no man could claim the last word. This is mine, I guess. You can add a father who signed up for visits every Saturday, brought picnics and his child to the state prison. My father had lofty ideals, an affinity for the condemned. Our prisoner, Sammy, kind eyes, a daughter younger than me. To a child of 10, he spoke of ordinary things. Of the robbery, only said, his wife turned him in. Visits were denied after a prison riot, and I didn't see him again alive. 30 years later, I arrive at the website of the executed. I read the dates, birth, death, method, place, his crime. The dollar amount small. 3 men found dead in a dark wood. 1 man later had much to say, and no man could claim the last word. For 20 years I wondered on his life. I put him in a house with a little yard, a vegetable patch, a wife, a cat, a simple job. This frame I crafted until it fit him well, and there I like to think of him with a child's devotion and a child's mind for fairy tales. A child's memory can make no sense of finding a death row photo, a face distorted by grief, not old age. A child's memory has no map for this, a sick wakening to darkness that moments before did not exist. There is no judgment in such a revelation, no one to mentor such information. The story unraveled in an instant, replaced by words of a different language, adult words, terror words, words that carry flashing images of straps and chairs, switches, needles, poison, and plate glass viewing windows, and my father dead half my life I cannot ask. So I phone family friends, am given a name, a young lawyer then, who remembers us, the prison, who fills in details so strange I question every corner of my memory. The prison, now maximum security, the progressive warden intent on reform, the death penalty struck down a handful of years. Old Smoky awaited its duty restored. I wonder if the damned men felt its presence, like a compass, a needle always pulling, the pull of steel never letting their mind ease. Sammy chose no last word. He chose the needle. I knew his eyes the moment I saw them, the slackness in his mouth, the uncut hair. When was the photo taken? His last day? His last meal, fried shrimp, French fries, hush puppies, salad, and a Coke. No final statement. He cast his eyes upward, the report said. sorry to do this to you, but I have limited time. I'm just going to have to. So when I was 20, my father called, and my father died of AIDS. And when I was 20, he called me and said that he had 6 months to live and asked me to come out. And so I went out to take care of him in his last 6 months, and he lived in San Francisco. And he was in the AIDS ward in the last, leg of it. And about, I can't even remember, 6-7 years ago, maybe, I was reading, the internet, I was reading the news, and it said that the AIDS ward was closing because of the new drugs that they have on the market. People were living and they didn't need the AIDS ward anymore. And I just felt such a mix of emotions, this relief, but also, this feeling like he had just missed this window by such a small amount. So this is the poem I wrote about that. It's called AIDS Ward, San Francisco, 1991. This is the bed, empty again, next to the man dying. This is the strap that ties down the man that lies next to the empty bed. This is the daughter untying the strap that restrains the man that lies in an empty room where he is dying on a floor full of rooms, emptying. This is the daughter who speaks to the man who can't remember her, who brings him grapes he cannot eat and refuses the gloves from the nurse and kicks the mask under the bed, in the empty room where the man is dying on a floor full of emptied rooms. This is the girl who unties the straps for the man who hit her with his hands and draws the curtain across the empty bed and hates the smell of latex, the sight of masks. On the nurses who float past, not looking at her and the man who is dying. These are the weeks the girl watches the walls instead of the man, whose skin is piss yellow and eyes are piss yellow, who shakes and drools and shits himself and who doesn't know who she is. As the nurses push past and beds fill up fast and empty again, walled off by white curtains. This is the ward that speaks in whispers, walled off by white curtains from public view. This is the floor you dream in nightmares, where the cruel man dies in an empty room, and the nurses bring you blankets on a floor full of whispers, empty and cold. This is the father that dies in the room, in a ward of nightmares that existed in whispers. This is the ward people whisper about. I'm going to, okay. There's a poem by Elizabeth Bishop about her visiting Ezra Pound in the asylum, when he was put away for, all of his broadcasting, Mussolini, all of his nuttery. And she uses that, the house that Jack built, and I always loved that poem so much. And I loved when she wrote it, the way that she was sort of, talking about her horror and her sympathy at the same time. And so I used that for this.
What's the name of her poem?
God, I knew you were going to ask me that.
She only has 100 years.
I know, right? At the asylum, something like that, yeah. Visiting the asylum. Okay, so this is the last poem, and this one's called New Year's Day. Others speak. They call for time to come meet them. We do not speak. We rest. We look for nothing and do not stretch to find ourselves different in the new year. We lie together under wool blankets. The baby kicks my back, pads my shoulder with her fingers, roots for what is hidden until she cries herself awake. I lift my shirt, eyes closed, and offer her my breast as she squirms into me. My leg moves sideways to find his warm leg. We three knot ourselves together in sleep, content in knowing what we'll find when we awake. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I had such a good time here.